There is a cast iron skillet in your kitchen with a rusty spot on it. In 1953, a farm wife used one pan for 40 years, and it never rusted once. Not because she was careful with it. That pan got dragged across a wood stove, scrubbed with salt, left on the back of the range with grease standing in it, and used every single day for 3 meals. It had a harder life than yours will ever have, and it came out of that black and slick and perfect, and it went to one of her children when she died, and it is very likely still cooking somewhere tonight. Now go and pick up yours, run a finger across the cooking surface. If it feels the least bit tacky or sticky, or if there is a patch that catches your fingernail, or if there is orange anywhere, I can tell you almost certainly what happened, and it is one of two things, and neither one of them is that you failed to oil it enough. Most people are doing too much to a cast iron pan, not too little. That is the part nobody says. I grew up in a kitchen with three of them, and the largest one never left the stove. It sat on the back left burner permanently because there was no point putting away a thing you were going to want again in 4 hours. There was a coffee can of lard on the shelf above it, and that is the entire toolkit, a can and a rag. By the end of this, you will know what seasoning actually is, and it is not a coat of oil sitting on the metal. You will know the single mistake that ruins more skillets than anything else, and almost everybody has done it. You will know why lard in particular and whether it still matters, and you will know the one thing you must never do to a cast iron pan, which people do every day without knowing. Stay with me, because the second part is where the pan is being lost. Here is the reframe, and it changes everything about how you treat the thing. Seasoning is not oil. Seasoning is plastic. I mean, that almost literally, and I am not being clever, what is on a well-seasoned pan is not a layer of grease. If it were grease, it would wipe off, and it would go rancid, and it would come away the first time you cook something wet in it. What is actually there is polymerized fat. When you heat a very thin film of oil past a certain point, the fat molecules break apart and link to each other into the iron, and they form a hard, dry, plastic-like coating that is chemically bonded to the metal. It is a different substance than the oil you started with. It does not wipe off, it does not go rancid, and it is what makes a pan slick and what keeps water away from bare iron. That is why a seasoned pan does not rust. Rust needs iron, water, and oxygen together. A good coat of seasoning simply does not let the water reach the iron. So everything that follows comes out of one idea. You are not oiling a pan. You are building a hard finish on it, one thin layer at a time. And the way you build a hard finish is very different from the way you would grease something. And that leads straight to the mistake. Too much fat does not make a better coat. It makes a worse one. If you leave a thick film of oil on a pan and heat it, the top of that film hardens while the fat underneath stays soft and unconverted. What you get is a gummy, sticky, uneven layer that never fully cures, that catches your finger, and that eventually flakes off in patches and takes the good seasoning with it. That sticky feeling on a pan is the single most common complaint people have, and it is always the same cause: too much oil. Somebody was trying to be generous with a pan and made it worse. The rule that fixes it sounds wrong the first time you hear it. Put oil on the pan, then wipe it all back off. Every bit of it, like you have changed your mind, until the surface looks dry and barely shines, and what stays behind in the pores of that iron after you have wiped it dry is exactly the right amount. That is the whole technique. Thin enough that it looks like you failed. That is the target. Now, why lard? Partly because it was there on a farm that butchered a hog every November. Lard was not a purchase, it was a byproduct, and there was a crock of it in the kitchen at all times. Nobody chose it over anything. It was what a kitchen ran on. But it does also happen to work well, and it is worth knowing why. It is a fat that is solid at room temperature and stays put on a vertical surface rather than running off. It has a reasonably high smoke point, and it is stable. It builds a good hard layer. And here is the honest part, because I promised you I would not sell you the old way just for being old. Lard is not magic, and it is not the only answer. Any fat with a decent smoke point will polymerize and build seasoning. Plenty of people today swear by grapeseed or canola or flaxseed. Flaxseed builds the hardest, glassiest coat of anything, and it is also the most likely to flake off in sheets later, which is why bakers of pans argue about it endlessly. Use lard if you have it. Use bacon grease. Use a neutral cooking oil. The fat matters far less than how thin you put it on and how hot you take it, and it is worth knowing what that pan represented because it explains why nobody fussed over it. A good cast iron skillet ran $2 or $3 in the middle of the 1950s. Not nothing in a farm kitchen, but one purchase, made once, and everybody understood it was permanent. There was no version of that decision where you bought another in 4 years. The pan outlived the stove it sat on, often outlived the person who bought it, and got written into wills alongside the china. That is a different relationship with an object than we have now, and it produced different behavior. Nobody babied that pan because nobody was worried about it. I proved that to myself the hard way, and I would rather you learned it from me. I found a skillet at a sale, rusted right through the cooking surface, orange all over, the kind most people would walk past. I took it home and I stripped it back to bare gray iron, and then I seasoned it twice thick because I wanted to do a proper job of it. It came out sticky, not slick, sticky. Everything caught on it. I had done exactly what I have just told you not to do, and I had done it out of enthusiasm. So I scrubbed it back and started again, and this time I put the fat on and wiped it off until the pan looked dry, and I was convinced I had wasted my time. 6 thin coats like that in a hot oven, upside down. That pan is the one I use most. It is black and it is slick and eggs slide on it, and I have not done a thing to it since except cook and wipe it out. Same pan, same fat, same oven. The only difference was that the second time I was applying almost nothing. That is the number I want you to carry, not a temperature and not a brand of oil. Wipe it all off. If this is already making you want to go and feel your own pan, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn the notification bell on while you are there. I put out one of these every week, the old practical knowledge that worked for 100 years and got quietly replaced with something you have to buy. The bell is the only way these reach you, and then stay right here because the next part is the one that has done the most damage. Here is the second part, and it is the thing that is quietly killing pans in kitchens right now. The pan is not being worn out, it is being put away wet. Almost nobody rusts a skillet by cooking in it. They rust it in the 10 minutes after. The pan gets washed, then set on the drainer or toweled and put in a cupboard or left in the sink overnight because it is late. There is water in the bottom of it or a film of it in pores you cannot see, and by morning there is orange. A cast iron pan should never air dry, and it should never go away damp. It gets dried by heat, not by a towel. Wash it, then put it straight back on a burner over medium for a minute or two until every trace of water has steamed off and the pan is hot and bone dry. Then, off the heat, half a teaspoon of fat, and wipe it all around, and then wipe it off again. That is 30 seconds of work, and it is the whole maintenance routine, not once a week. Every time. And now the other half of it, which is the myth that has probably done more harm than any other piece of kitchen advice in circulation. You can use soap on cast iron. I know somebody's grandmother is turning over, but that rule dates from when soap meant lye soap, which was strongly alkaline and would genuinely attack the seasoning. Modern dish detergent is a different substance and will not dissolve a polymerized coating. It lifts loose food and grease off the top of it, which is what you want. What actually strips a pan is not a squirt of dish soap. It is long soaking, it is the dishwasher, and it is harsh scouring right down to metal. So use a little soap if the pan needs it. Use hot water and a brush or a chainmail scrubber, do it quickly, and then dry it on the heat. If something is stuck on, the old answer is still the best one. A spoonful of coarse salt and a folded paper towel or a rag scrubbed around while the pan is still warm. The salt is abrasive enough to lift the food and not abrasive enough to hurt the finish. Now let me tell you about the money because there is a real story here, and it is not the one you would expect. Cast iron is the rare case where the old thing did not lose, still made, still sold, still cheap, and a new one costs about what a decent non-stick pan costs and will outlive its owner. Nobody killed cast iron. What happened instead is that it got made complicated. Look at what is sold around a skillet now. Seasoning waxes, conditioning oils, restoration pucks, specialist scrubbers, pan protectors, every one of them solving a problem. A coffee can of grease solved for a century. And underneath that is a much bigger sale, which is the pan that has to be replaced. A coated nonstick pan is a consumable. The coating wears and the manufacturer will tell you plainly to replace it every few years, and most people do. That is a repeat purchase built into the object. A skillet is a single sale, once, possibly the last frying pan somebody ever buys. I am not telling you there is a room somewhere where men decided this. There is not. And a nonstick pan is genuinely useful for some jobs. What happened is simpler and worse. It is a quiet agreement among everybody who profits to make the free method sound difficult because a method that sounds difficult sends people to the aisle. Nobody has to coordinate and nobody has to lie. All the mystique around cast iron, all the arguing about oils and temperatures does the work on its own, and it has for 50 years. The truth is embarrassing to sell. Cook in it, wipe it out, keep it dry. If that landed, hit like and subscribe, and ring that bell. Now here is the third part, which is how you build the finish in the first place. If your pan is fine, you do not need to do any of this. Cooking in it is what maintains it, and fatty cooking builds seasoning faster than any oven session will. But if it is patchy or sticky, or you have brought a rusted one back from a sale, here is the whole method. Get it clean first, and this is the one time to be rough. Steel wool and hot water on rust, right down to gray metal if you have to, and you cannot build a finish on top of rust, and you cannot build it on top of a gummy old layer. Dry it immediately on the heat because bare iron will flash rust in front of your eyes. Then a smear of fat over the entire pan, inside, outside, the handle, everywhere, and then wipe it all off with a clean cloth until you would swear there is nothing left on it. Into a hot oven upside down on a rack with something underneath to catch drips. Around 450 degrees is the usual advice, above the smoke point of whatever fat you are using, which is the part that matters. An hour, then let it cool in the oven, then do that 5 or 6 more times. That is the part people skip, and it is the difference between a pan that looks seasoned and a pan that is thin coats, many of them. Now the warnings, and there are real ones here. First, ventilation. Taking fat past its smoke point in a closed kitchen produces a great deal of smoke, and it will set off your alarm, and the fumes are genuinely unpleasant to breathe for a long session. Open the windows, run the exhaust fan, and if you have birds in the house, understand that fumes from overheated cookware can be fatal to them. Put the bird in another room with the door shut. Second, oily rags. This one is not widely known, and it should be. Rags soaked in oil, particularly linseed or flaxseed oil, can heat up on their own as the oil oxidizes, and they have started house fires in bins and laundry piles. Do not ball them up and leave them. Lay them flat outdoors to dry completely, or put them in a sealed metal container of water. Third, the pan stays hot far longer than you think, and the handle is exactly as hot as the pan. Cast iron holds heat long after the burner is off, and the classic injury is somebody grabbing a bare handle out of habit. Leave a dry towel over it as a signal. Fourth, never put a hot cast iron pan into cold water, and never run cold water into one. That is thermal shock, and it can crack or warp the pan permanently. Fifth, no dishwasher ever. Long detergent exposure and a heated dry cycle will strip a pan and leave it orange, and a plain one. Skip acid for the first while on a new or newly seasoned pan. Long simmers of tomato sauce, wine, or vinegar will eat into a young finish. Once a pan is genuinely black and hard, it will handle it fine. So here is exactly what to do, starting with tonight's dinner. Cook something fatty in it. Bacon, sausage, potatoes fried in grease. That is not a treat for the pan. That is how the finish gets built. Clean it while it is still warm. Hot water, a brush, a little soap if it needs it, or salt and a rag for anything stuck. Dry it on the burner until it is hot and there is no water anywhere. Half a teaspoon of fat, wiped all over, then wiped back off. Off the heat, 30 seconds. Store it somewhere air can get to it. If you stack pans, put a paper towel between them, and if you see rust, do not panic and do not throw it out. Scrub the rust off, dry it hot, and put a couple of thin coats on. Cast iron is the most forgiving object in your kitchen. There is almost nothing you can do to one that cannot be undone by somebody with an afternoon and some steel wool. One more thing, because it is the part I actually remember. That skillet never got put in a cupboard, it lived on the stove, and I understand now that this was not laziness, it was the method. A pan that is used 3 times a day is being seasoned 3 times a day, and it never sits long enough anywhere to take on moisture. And it was never washed the way we wash things now. It got wiped out with a rag while it was still hot, and that was that, and it went back on the burner. The whole care of that pan took as long as it takes me to say this sentence. There is a thing I did not understand until I was grown. That pan was black in a way a new one is not, and it was not from any technique. It was from about 50,000 meals, every breakfast of eggs, every pan of cornbread, every chicken out of the yard, put another invisible layer on it, and nobody was trying. The finish was the residue of the cooking, not a project somebody took on. That is the part you cannot buy and cannot rush. You can build a good pan in an afternoon. The other kind takes 20 years, and the only way to get one is to start. If you have gotten this far with me, hit like, subscribe, and turn on that bell. Nobody sponsors a video that says the answer is a spoonful of grease and a rag, So the only thing keeping this in front of people is you. I asked my grandmother once how she kept it that way. She looked at me like I had asked her how she kept the floor from floating away. She said she had never done anything to it. She said she just never let it sit wet. You did not forget this. Nobody taught you, and then you forgot. It was taken from you one replaceable pan at a time, one specialty product at a time, until you were standing in a store looking at a wall of coated pans with a 3-year life, holding an object that a farm kitchen would have handed down twice. So do one thing tonight. Cook something in that skillet, wipe it out warm, and dry it on the burner before you put it away. Then tell me in the comments how old your oldest pan is, what county you are in, and whether it came down to you from somebody, because I read everyone, and those stories are the reason I keep recording. And if this rang true to you, come back for the next one, because I'm going to show you how she kept butter sweet and spreadable on the counter through the whole summer with no ice and no refrigerator, using a crock, cold water, and one thing about the lid that almost nobody gets right. Nobody sells it, so nobody teaches it. I will. Keep it simple, keep it yours, and remember, the people who cooked 3 meals a day out of one black pan knew things we are only starting to remember.